Cool. Welcome back to the Uncut and Unfiltered podcast. Today we are going to be looking at the beautiful distillery of Ardbeg, one of Islay's gems. As always, we have got Posh Scotch here, as well as Stevie. Thanks for joining, gents. I'm quite excited about today. I love Ardbeg.
You're excited.
Very excited.
Are you, Ian?
Mildly.
I'm not going to let that dampen my mood. I'm very excited. Ardbeg is a distillery that I have a bit of an interesting sort of relationship with, and I think most people would probably be the same, in as much as when I initially tried Ardbeg, it was disgusting. It was the last thing I wanted to drink. It was something I couldn't wrap my head around. It was just this big, ugly monster, and I didn't want to have anything to do with it. And in sort of the last 3-4 years, it has become one of the staples of my cupboard. It is one of my favorite whiskies. It's one of the ones I get most excited about. And I know that we're going to have a bit of a disagreement on this later, but I really love their committee releases. I love the different stuff that they're putting out. And yeah, I'm excited. So I don't know. Should we start with the dram? Start with one of the core range, a 10, a Nanoa, or a Wee Beastie? I don't know. I'm easy, guys.
Wow,
I'm going to go with the Wee Beastie. So
Wee Beastie it up.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, I'll hit some of that up as well. Why not? Let's talk about Ardbeg. It's owned by LVMH, Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, which obviously Bernie Arnault, or Bernard, I don't know him, but Bernie, if you're watching, big ups Bernie. He is obviously now the richest man in the world, supposedly. According to Forbes, 220 billion, I think, was announced as of end of last year, beginning of this year.
Yeah, you can afford a bottle or two of Ardbeg.
I think he can, right? And it's not surprising when you look at the fact that they bought Ardbeg back in the late 90s, I think it was 97, 98, for 7 million. And they sold one of their casks, cask number 3, last year for 16
there was no Wee Beastie left.
So, I mean, like, buying a distillery for 7 and selling cask number 3 for 16 seems like a good investment strategy. I think your man knows what he's up to here. Obviously, Ardbeg is one of the, it's an arm of Glenmorangie, LVMH, and I think LVMH is now under the whole Christian Dior umbrella, right?
If you say so, mate.
Corporate structures.
I mean,
boring nonsense, maybe, but I think it's interesting. There's so many cool brands within this. You've got stuff like Christian Dior, Tiffany, Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, and then you've got Glenmorangie. Like, they've got some of the best brands out there in the world. As a luxury lifestyle sort of.
They've got all kinds of drinks and spirits brands as well. I'm pretty sure they own like Belvedere vodka.
Yeah.
There's quite a few rums as well. Cognacs, Hennessy, obviously.
It's an expansive portfolio. It's really, really cool stuff.
It covers all kinds of luxury brands. They've got massive watch portfolio as well. I think, as some of you guys know, I'm into my watches. They own Tag Heuer, Zenith, Bulgari.
Again, big names.
Big names, right?
Big names. So not surprising he is supposedly the richest man in the world. But also not surprising, in my mind, that they are putting out some of the best liquid. And I mean, again, we're not talking about Glenmoe today, but Glenmorangie is a absolute behemoth in the industry as well. Like, puts out some absolutely amazing liquid. And what I love about the fact that these two distilleries are part of the same portfolio is they are such different styles. So they really are sort of getting involved in all aspects of whiskey from where I'm sitting.
That's what I was going to say, is if you reading through that portfolio of brands that they own, and then you've got Ardbeg, says a lot about Ardbeg. You know, he knows what he's doing. He knows what business he's picking, and he knows exactly what he's doing with those businesses. You know, Ardbeg, I wouldn't class it as a luxury whiskey as such, because, well, brand-wise, you know what I mean?
Okay.
It doesn't feel like Macallan or those sorts of brands.
Yep,
it's not clean, right?
I'd disagree though, because from a price perspective,
yes, yeah,
like it's and the kind of the level that goes into the marketing, the boxes, the packaging. I think it is pitching
definitely.
itself.
No, it definitely is.
But it's kind of
a brand
it's new wave premium, right? They're pitching
it's
it
trendy.
Correct. They're pitching it to younger drinkers, I feel. And that's why I love it. Don't get me wrong. I think Macallan, you can't argue with their branding. They've grown to be the most popular name in Scotch, really, you know, when it comes to it. And that's great, you know. However, they're using the same marketing now as was what made them successful back in the 70s, 80s, you know. Ardbeg are coming at this from a really new, fresh perspective. Stevie and I went along to their ice cream, you know, the whole day. It was fucking awesome, man. You know, and again, really thinking about what they're doing. I've said for a while, and Blair Bowman, if you're watching, or if anyone at home doesn't know who Blair Bowman is, go and look, you know, type his name into Google, look, read some of his stuff. He taught me about ice cream and peaty whiskies. And it's a great way to cut through that peatiness, you know, that sweetness. And that whole day, not only was it well thought out from that point of view, but every single whiskey was paired perfectly with some really bizarre flavored ice creams. I think they're doing some awesome,
And
awesome
insects.
stuff. And yeah, there was some weird shit.
You went to
there
that as well,
yeah.
didn't you? On
I couldn't
another
make it
day.
in the
Oh, you
end,
didn't go.
yes.
Oh, fair.
Sadly.
Shame. How much is the 10? By the way, there was only a drop left of the Wee Beastie. You've got that, Jake.
Oh, I see. Shorting me, were you? It's delicious. It's so good for a 5-year-old whiskey. And this is again like people talking about whiskey needing to be old, particularly with peatier whiskies. You know, Ardbegs, Stoichers, these sorts of things work well at young ages. And I think that the fact that they've put 5 on the label and haven't done it as a non-age statement, Wee Beastie, it speaks volumes again for their sort of their confidence in their product, right? You know, they know what they're doing. This is good, and you should enjoy it for what it is. It's a 5-year-old whiskey. Here you go, boom.
And I couldn't go to the ice cream thing, but I was at a different event that LVMH were at, and it was kind of cocktail event towards the end of summer, and they had the Wee Beastie, and they were using it in cocktails, and they made some absolutely banging cocktails with it as well. Again, it's perfect for that, and it's, you know, it's reasonably accessibly priced. It's I think about 35, 36 quid a bottle, maybe a tenner more than like a kind of supermarket blended whiskey, but the experience you get from it is great, and it is obviously a different beast, pardon the pun, to the 10-year-old as well, even though the 10-year-old obviously doesn't come in at much more. It's what is it, £6, £7, £8 more to get a bottle of the 10 over the 5?
Yeah, I think something like that, depending on where you buy it as well.
Yeah.
This is the thing. I think, you know, we look at deals that come up on the 10. The 10 is a really good buy in my mind, particularly when you do get those deals where it is sort of, you know, 45, 50 quid sort of thing. I think that's well worth the money. I've just poured a bit of the Anoa, which is the sherry matured one.
Yeah, look
correct?
at the colour, man.
Is
Compared to
it
the 10.
It's exclusively sherry matured, right?
I think so. I don't think I've ever had the Anna before. I've
It's
had the
really good. It is really, really good. And again, this is a non-age statement whiskey, and for a non-age statement, it's wonderful.
They've put a lot of, going back to your sort of marketing, they put a lot of money into their marketing on these 3 recently. Last year, this year, they brought out some sort of comic. Is that right with it?
Yes.
Planet Ardbeg, I think.
Yeah, I think
Is
so.
it a physical comic? I still don't know.
I believe it is.
It is, okay, yeah. Yeah. So again, being very trendy, very alternative, and you just have to look at some of those labels from the committee releases there, or the special releases. You know, they are being very edgy with things, which is the appeal to me anyway.
Yeah, I mean, clearly there's a lot that goes into it, and you know, it's interesting because obviously you get a lot of whiskey traditionalists who I think, I maybe almost include myself in this, who think it's a bit too much, right? They go too far down the marketing route, whether it's the Ardbeg with the pirates on it, or the black that's got the sheep on it. But you know, maybe at least with the black, right, there was an idea behind it, right? It was the New Zealand wine casks, and obviously you get a bunch of sheep in New Zealand.
But even with the Ardbeg, there's a massive story there. I mean,
Hang on, was that a farmer rather than a pirate?
Okay, Ardbeg.
There we go.
I was a
Yeah.
little Somerset, yeah. It's not cider, Stevie. We're still on whiskey, all right?
But, you know, there's a story behind that as well. I think there is a lot of thought that goes into it, and I like it. I really enjoy that. And I don't think, you know, if they weren't, you know, other brands don't go to that much effort to have fun with their labels.
I agree. And where I would compare Ardbeg to from a whiskey brand perspective, I would compare them to Highland Park. but I would say they are executing 1,000 times better. So yes, you can argue, okay, do all of these labels, all of these stories really link to the whiskey and the final product at hand? Maybe not. Maybe some of them are a bit of the stretch. The Ardbeg is all about the guy who designed the label, right? And they're kind of paying homage to him.
The guy on the label is the guy that was retiring. I think it was the
sorry, you're right.
blender or the distiller.
Mickey, the
You're
distillery
correct.
manager.
Sorry, you're
that's-
absolutely right. It's the artwork is about the guy who made the whiskey. Correct. Sorry. But this is it, They're all kind of paying a bit of homage to people or to the brand, what they're trying to create. But I feel that it's done in a more unique and more on point way than Highland Park, which is kind of a little bit tribal, a little bit kind of hitting up this kind of
Just
Viking
for the sake of it
dragon
sometimes.
thing. But it feels like sometimes, does this really fit? Or does it just kind of look cool? This, I feel, it fits a lot better. They've done it with, exactly like you say, Stevie, that little bit more thought. I just feel like it's more rounded off as a brand.
So, okay, I'm going to agree to disagree. I actually think Highland Park, I know people moan about the Viking shit. Like, if you look at the history of Orkney, it was ruled by the Vikings for so much longer than the rest of the UK. Like, the Kirkwall Cathedral was founded by, like, the Earl Magnus that you get on one of the things. Yeah, they push it hard, right?
But they don't really tell any stories with that. They just go, here's some cool tribally Viking stuff on our bottles. Like, there's no, let's get you involved in the history of our culture and our, if there was more of that, I would buy into it more, but I don't see that from Highland Park.
They have done it in the past, and I guess maybe the argument is now it is more about the kind of like the fancy blown glass bottles, and they had the Warriors series that told
the wooden boxes.
Yeah, with the wooden boxes, and that told you about some of the Viking chiefs that had like an impactful history on the island of
And they were
Orkney.
really cool, not only from that point of view, but also from a visual point of view. There were the boxes added that much more. Again, I think Peter had some of them, and he said, to be honest, don't really like the liquid, but I love the whole
So
presentation.
they were like the triangular shaped boxes, weren't they? Yeah.
Correct, yeah. And I just think, like, if you're going to go to that sort of level of history and legacy, then give us the full story. Don't just kind of fluff it up a little bit and, this is kind of what we're about. And that's what I feel like. But where with Ardbeg, sorry, let's get back on topic. I don't want to be slating Highland Park. I love Highland Park, but I just trigger, stop. Sorry, we've got a Doberman who is a little bit overexcited today.
Put that a bit close for you.
That's where actually I think Ardbeg in the core range do a really good job though, because you've got the I'm going to pronounce this wrong, the Ugadale and the Corryvreckan. And the Corryvreckan is, I think, named after like a tidal swirl just off of Islay. And I think they do that stuff really well. And I don't actually have a problem with the marketing behind any of this stuff in the committee stuff. I think
you have a problem with the liquid.
I have a problem with the liquid because I think the Oogie and the Corrie are so good. And they're so consistent, and they're available. I mean, they've gone up in price a little bit, but they're still 55, 65, 70 pounds. And for those committee releases, they're now above 100, 110, 120. I just simply don't think they're either worth chasing or worth the premium over what's in the core range. Because I think Ardbeg, especially given it's mostly non-age statement stuff, has one of the strongest and most varied and most interesting core ranges of any distillery.
I'd agree with that, definitely. And again, Pete, in my mind, works so well at a young age. Aging it for longer, it dissipates, it changes, and I think that what Ardbeg does so well is get that raw Islay funk, that rich, oily, just filth, absolute tarry engine oil, just all the burning. It's just an absolute plethora of nastiness, and it all mixes together in such a wonderful and unique way.
But what I love about Ardbeg though is they managed to do that without, and this is no criticism of these other distilleries because they have their legions fans. It's less rubbery than Lefroy, and I think it's less iodine-y and medicinal than Lagavulin. is. And it
Yep.
carves out its own spot
Yep.
that for me works better when you're looking for something, reasonably heavily peated.
Yes, definitely. I agree. And as well, I think, it's such a robust whiskey as well. It works really nicely in different styles. One thing I would like to see from Ardbeg, if I'm honest, is a little bit more, almost like what Bruichladdich has done with real provenance around casks, looking at, okay, let's exclusively mature this in this type of cask, exclusively mature this in this type of cask. I get what you're saying when it comes to the liquid. Some of the expressions can be very similar from their committee releases. And it's kind of maybe like, okay, well, what makes one different from the other than the really cool artwork and the sort of story that you're telling us? Maybe that's a route that they can kind of toy around with. Because I think, the Anoa for me, again, that you talk about non-age statement whiskies being really, really good, in certain circumstances. I just think this is wonderful. It works so well.
I wouldn't say they were playing it safe on keeping all their expressions fairly consistent and, as you said, almost in and around the same kind of style. They do mix things up. I think is it the Scorch?
Yep.
That's to do with obviously heavily toasted casks, yeah. But you're right. I think they play it well. Yeah, they may play it safe a little bit, and they don't experiment enough. But maybe that's just their thing, Like they might be like, cool, Bruichladdich and Buna. They're doing those things. Why do we need to? They'd just be another one of them.
Yeah, I don't know. As Ian says, I think that they've carved out such a unique sort of flavor of whiskey that it would be really interesting to see that in different sort of maturation profiles. There is not undeniably, you cannot mistake an Ardbeg. Sometimes I have, mistaken Lagavulin, Laphroaig's, Bruichladdich, Portchard. Some of these do sometimes cross over a little bit for me. Ardbeg for me is probably the only whiskey on Islay that is truly unmistakable. Perhaps Laphroaig as well, definitely has that sort of, but there are still expressions that sometimes I'm not sure about that. Ardbeg for me is unquestionable. It is its own thing in its own right. Even we've dealt with some casks before, which is like single Islay malt. It's unnamed, but it's definitely Ardbeg.
Right.
And you don't even need that little wink that it's definitely, this is definitely
Ardbeg,
fucking Ardbeg in my glass. Do you know what I mean? There's no question.
Well, then I guess if it's not broke, don't fix it, as I say.
Yeah, I didn't know. I disagree with that. I do think that a little bit of, like you say, they've put enough effort into the branding, and I think they are thinking about what they're doing from a maturation point. I just don't think that they're delivering that information to us. And that's where I think maybe
they're focusing too much on the
on the stories and on the branding,
the
but
artwork,
not bringing
and,
the product into picture with that.
No, do you know what? I think you're completely right. I think every time they do one of these special releases, it's all about that campaign, whether it's the punk or it's the pirates or what the aliens or whatever, But I think what I don't get is the details really and the story behind the liquid as such. It's more just the stories behind the stories, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Which I've never actually thought about it this way. I'm literally I'm chatting whilst I'm thinking. And fair enough. I understand a little bit more your frustration now. Because previously, full well, Stevie, I buy every release. And what I like about the Ardbeg committee as well is it doesn't have such a buzz around it that every time they launch the website crashes, or every time they launch it's all on ballot systems or whatever.
It's not far off though.
Well, it's not a million miles off, but you know what? I've pretty much got all of the most recent releases.
Yeah.
Which you look at your Macallans, your Springbanks, you're talking about that higher level of premium whiskey. I think it's still very premium, but it doesn't quite have the same attention. And you know what? That's because I bet you anything, new drinkers coming into the scene, liking the idea of whiskey being an investment and something quite cool to own. I bet you anything, they try like a Macallan 10-year-old and they try an Ardbeg 10-year-old and they go, what the fuck is this? This is dirty. This is kind of vaguely palatable. Even if they don't like whiskey, it's like, yeah, okay, this is light, it's kind of sweet, this is cool. I'll go with the Macallans or whatever.
So I think what they've done, and I will say successfully, although I'm sure I will get shit for this on the internet.
Go on.
Is look at their pricing strategy, because I think a lot of people will sit there and go, right, committee releases 110, 120, whatever they are now, bit expensive for no age statement whiskey, marketing or whatever else behind them.
I think the 8 was only 80. We'll come
The
back to
8,
that.
yeah,
in a minute,
absolutely. The 8 was.
I
I think
love
the 8 was
I'm gonna
cheaper.
fight you on the 8.
I think it was
bit
cheaper
to
than
death.
that even.
Yeah, I
But-
think maybe. Yeah.
Like the other yearly ones, because like the 8's still available, I think, anyway, right?
I don't know. Yeah, I managed to pick up a few bottles of it. I think they did do that one as a bigger bet.
They've priced it in a way that I think, doesn't detract enough of the drinkers and doesn't attract enough of the flippers.
investors, right? Correct.
Because
And is that not such a sweet spot?
yeah, I think it is. I think you get a bunch of drinkers who like sit there and grumble and be like, it's non-age statement Ardbeg, why should it be more than like 10, 20 quid more than the core range like Corrie and Oogie, right? They're like, it should be 80 quid, not 120 quid. And I can see that argument for sure.
I mean, it's cask strength. This is something that a lot of people aren't taking, or at least a higher strength. For, So I think that's something that needs to be taken into account. You've got to take into account the duty.
But those two are higher strength though as well. They're both in the 50s.
Which, sorry?
The Oogie and the Corrie.
Oh, they're in the 50s. I
Yeah.
knew that they were high. I thought they were 48. Okay, fair enough.
I think there was a moment in time where they were getting flipped. I think when the Ardbeg came out and the 8, you then saw the next month hundreds.
You did.
Pages and pages and pages. But then what Ardbeg did is they then, whilst that was happening, they then put up for public sale again,
The
like a
re-release
round
of
2, a re-release of it, and probably some leftover bottles, maybe not the committee ones.
We have the
And I think
non-committee
that
ones, right? The lowest strength.
Yeah, and I think that deterred people away from flipping them. And I think that was I think it was good in a way of Ardbeg. I think they knew exactly what they were doing when they did that. And they
I think
left
Bernie's
that window.
been directly involved. He's running the show.
But that's why I don't think it's caused that kind of Springbank and
Yeah.
all those other special releases where they buy and straight on the markets, which is great because it means they're getting opened. Hopefully,
And this is the thing, man. Like I say, every single one I've bought, I've opened them like not the day they've arrived, the moment they have arrived. I've been so excited.
Normally at 10 a.m.
Literally, yeah, and it is. It's normally in the morning, which doesn't sound great. I'm not an alcoholic, I promise you. But it'll come through the door. I'll be so excited. Pop the cork, little dram, and they always interest me. I have to say, the most recent one, I started to maybe hear some of your sort of little complaints coming through about them being a bit similar. I didn't entirely get, what is it? The Hypernova?
The Hypernova, all right, yeah.
The Hypernova, I wasn't. I've only tried that one once. Okay, I haven't actually gone back to it. I know there's a bit gone out of it. I've shared it. I've shared it with a few people.
Big dram.
Jesus Christ, no! Shared it with a few people. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that. And I tell you what. I mean, fucking hell. It is just thick and juicy. You're not a happy boy, are you? Relax, we'll be done soon. Okay. We would have a trigger cam, but to be honest, he runs around the whole office too much. You just have to catch him as he goes. So this is another non-age statement from them, correct?
This is the most heavily peated Ardbeg, is that right?
Ever, supposedly. Yes, I think that was the story around this one. Yeah, obviously they did the Supernova there, 2-3 years ago, whenever it was.
I've done a couple of Supernovas.
Possibly the
the last one.
smokiest dram in the world.
In the world.
This one at least.
Don't know about that.
That's a bit Carlsberg, isn't it?
So true. So true. And the thing about peat, obviously, past a certain point, is white noise. Like, our palates are not refined enough to be picking up certain levels of peat. Like, you can drop
So the
me out.
sweetness still comes through so much for me on this as well. Even though that's smoky peat is very much there, I still get that beauty. And that's the thing about Ardbeg. It is very peaty and smoky, but the sweetness comes through for me so much.
And this is the thing.
With
I
this
think what's
distillery.
interesting about that, Stevie, is your palate has refined to accept it and to look past the peat.
Oh, the
right?
first time I tried Ardbeg, same with you. I mean,
It's just too much, right? And I've got to that
Hated
point
it.
now where you have that tar, that oil, that absolute dirt, but then you can look past that to the dried fruit and the maltiness and the licorice. And normally I don't like licorice. I actually hate licorice as a sweet, but in whiskeys, picking up licorice notes normally doesn't hit my palate right. But something about Ardbeg, you get this kind of licoricey, aniseedy thing from time to time, and I think it sits really well in the sort of the overall bouquet. It really works. It's nice.
How much was this? Sorry, you may have said I was just busy.
This was probably their most expensive one that I've
150
bought
quid?
to date. I think it was 160, 170 quid, something like that. It was quite punchy, and I think that's perhaps where I was a little bit like, is this different enough for 170? You know, I was hearing Ian's comments come through when I opened this.
Because this is like a sequel to their Supernova. Is that right? Yeah. So I reckon they went on the back of that with the price, because that still gets flipped around actually for, I think, about 400 quid. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Supernova.
I think so, yeah.
Wow,
I could be completely wrong. I'm sure people will shut me down in the comments.
That's big.
Please put me in my place if so. But I think that's what they went on, because 160 quid for a 9.8 statement. Listen, it's nice. Is it 160 quid nice?
I don't know. So I'm busy with
Here we go.
two drams in my hand.
It's coming.
Well said.
No.
That's it. That's enough. Thank you.
Is that enough? Okay. One of which is the 10.
Okay, and the other is the...
And there is such a clear line between these two drams. And I think, like you said, 45 quid or whatever, maybe 50 quid for the 10 nowadays. Like, would I want a Hypernova, or could I be okay with 3 10s or 2 Corries as well? Because again, the Corrie's like heavily peated. It's bourbon cask. It's quite light whiskey.
Yep.
I love the kind of really dirty, like engine oil, petrol note. It's like you're kind of licking the side of a BP garage somewhere. I'm not sure it's like 3 10s or 2 Corries.
It's not that good. Yeah. No, I have to say, for me, I mean, it's an interesting way of considering whiskies. I find it difficult to think in those terms, because particularly, again, like I remember I was buying Springbank Burgundies back in the day for like £70. And, you know, if I look at this as 2 or 3 Springbank Burgundies, you can fuck off. But then I can't buy Springbank Burgundies for that anymore. Do you know what I mean? I find that difficult way to look at things. I know what you mean. I just don't know if the value jump from the 8 being 70-80 pounds and this being 170 odd pounds, I don't think the value jump is there. I don't think there's enough of a, this is so much more special. It doesn't quite hit it for me. Whereas the 8 for me was like everything. And again, like I think for most whiskey conglomerates, certainly for the big boys, your Diageos, your Pernots, your White Mackays, etc., I think across the board, the average age of spirit bottled, when you're looking at blends and non-age statement whiskies, as well as all of the age statement core ranges, etc., is 8 years old. That's kind of the average in bottle age.
I hear you throughout being friends and working with you over the years. I always hear you say around that number with whiskies. You sometimes say, and like obviously it's going to be a bit controversial and not always the case, but you always say you'll see this at 8 at maybe its best. It doesn't mean when it gets past 8, but...
Oh, what? Are you talking about like young distilleries putting out younger stock?
I'm talking about young
as well?
distilleries, but you've also mentioned about others. Sorry, I'm not putting you on the spot here. I'm not saying,
put me on the
not
fucking
holding
spot,
you to that. But it's interesting you say that 8 years is quite a nice number, amount of time that really shows the distillery character and spirit, you know. Obviously past that it's going to intensify and do whatever it's doing in the cask, but I think, yeah, as you say, 8 is that kind of sweet spot, no?
Well, whether it's a sweet spot or not is one thing. I think 8 years is enough time in any cask, even if it's not a particularly active cask, where you are going to have gotten rid of a certain amount of that sort of cleric harshness, that new make liquid burn, you know, your kind of ethanolic sort of nothingness, sort of, you know, it's just intense alcohol, right? And you should have had some vanillins from the cask, some lactones, different bits and pieces that are coming in and adding flavor, but equally taking away the impurities.
But with Ardbeg, with 8 years old for you?
For me, Ardbeg at 8 is everything because, again, peat depreciates over time in cask. I think that the Ardbeg peat really works well young. I think the 5 is a wonderful expression and a really sort of interesting point of interest. Yeah, it's like, you know, get involved, try 5-year-old whiskey. Same reason I bottled our Stoischer at 3. It's like, try a 3-year-old whiskey. Okay, it's not entirely 3 and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, let's try different things. Let's open our minds a bit past, it has to be a certain age. But I think that the 8 isn't just try this, it's interesting. It's try this, it's fucking delicious.
He might disagree.
So no, I don't.
I don't think he disagrees. He just disagrees with the title, the name.
It's a good whiskey. But there's nothing to discuss about it. right?
But there is. We're discussing it right now. It's a great whiskey. That's the discussion. The discussion is over.
Exactly.
Pour yourself a dram and enjoy it.
But for me, okay, this is maybe me being anal. Like, a discussion implies it's more than like it's a good dram, job done, right?
Yeah, but that's how discussions go with me, mate. I've got my point of view, and that's all I'm having. I'm interested to hear your point, but like, do you disagree that it's a great whiskey?
No, I don't. But that's the thing for me. Like,
That
it's
is-
like
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. It's not interesting enough. It's not.
To
Maybe
be
the
called for
Hypernova should have been
discussion.
called for discussion.
yeah,
And the 8-year-old should have been called. What did you say before? Really solid Ardbeg, I think.
yeah,
the
just
Christmas
like
episode.
bang average.
Bang.
Ardbeg.
I disagree with that. It's not average Ardbeg.
Okay.
It's sensational Ardbeg. It's Ardbeg doing what it does best, and at a very, humble age. It's not, here's
True.
25-year-old. Boo! It's cost this much. It's 70, 80
And
pounds.
it
It's worth every
absolute-
fucking penny. It's going to do the trick.
It absolutely doesn't need to be. And in some ways, it would be more interesting if Ardbeg for discussion was like, we've aged this 3 years and a day, and we're so fucking confident in our spirit that that's good enough. Or it's like, it's 8 years old, and somehow we've still managed to bottle it at like 63% because we kept a bunch of casks like that we didn't water down. Like, it's fucking really strong shit. Like, have a chat about that. Or we've put it in something that we've never done before and we think it's totally fucking changed Ardbeg. Or we've made some Ardbeg and we forgot to fucking peat it first. Like,
I hear you. I don't want that sort of a discussion. This is lovely whiskey. Yeah? I'm happy to have another discussion. They didn't say we had to discuss the whiskey. It's just for a discussion.
Well, first of all,
Alright.
straight
For
away
any
on the
discussion.
nose from the other 2 or 3 I've had before this, it's different.
It's different, but also it is refined. It's an intellectual whiskey. It is a whiskey of the highest regard. I feel like this whiskey could have a doctorate or something. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, it's next level shit. Oh, it's just so good. I haven't even sipped on it yet, and it's in the middle here.
It's interesting because it's almost not as sweet as the others I've had. I've only had the 10, the Hypernova, and that's it. It's not as smoky as a Hypernova. There's a lot, for me, there's a lot of maltiness going on there with the
Yes.
smoke at the end.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it different. And hey, Ian, we're having a discussion about it. So get involved, my dude.
Oh, too true. I think that this is a really good place as well. For anyone watching, anyone thinking, I've tried Ardbeg before, it really put me off. Or for anyone thinking, I don't know what Ardbeg is. Basically, for anyone who's not already heavily involved with this brand, the 8 is a really good place to start, I think. I think it's the nail on the head. As Stevie says, you do get a bit of that sweetness shining through a little bit more. It's not as much of a bully as some of the other expressions.
no, and
And
actually,
it's accessible.
I
It's
think
at a good price point, 50.8% whiskey for 78, but even £80 a bottle is worth it all day long.
and actually, I think it's more accessible, maybe more easy drinking, ABV aside, than the 10-year-old.
Forget the ABV, sorry, with the ABV, because the 50.8% doesn't shine through. You can take
No.
a swim in this glass and there is no alcohol burn, there's no prickle, all of the notes are clear and concise. It's a really wonderful, it's not as oily as some of the others as well. I think that's the other thing. It coats your mouth in a really wonderful way, but it doesn't stay with you forever. You're not walking down the road 20 minutes later and it's still in your mouth.
No, there's less of that garage to
Yes.
it, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
That's a great way of saying it. Exactly that.
I think there's less of the garage, but there definitely is the smoke's there still a lot for me, and also almost like a heatheriness for me. You know?
Really?
Yeah, I kind of get that kind of like florality, like.
Do you get that
You
as
know what
well?
I mean?
Little
Like-
bit,
No, I don't
yeah.
get that at all. That's interesting. There's a good reason to sit down with a bottle later this evening and really analyze this. Just
Could
try and understand what you guys are getting.
could almost be a nice tasty Highland Park.
Fair
We'll get
enough.
onto that episode. I'm
Vastly
sure.
different, yeah. Highland Park to come.
Bring
in another
all
episode,
the
guys.
good Highland Parks.
I've got
please.
a lot of Highland Park. I love Highland Park. It was my first single malt. We should do that episode sooner rather than later.
But I mean, look, Ardbeg. So one of the Islay distilleries, I think they're 2.5 million. I think just shy of 2.5 million liters capacity.
They are expanding, aren't they? They are building a new still house.
What I was just about to say. So yeah, 2.5 million litres at present, but I think what they are looking at is exactly, their position in the market. All of the other brands of their caliber have upped the ante. It's great to see that they're going to do the same. I would love to see, aside from what I was saying completely off the cuff earlier about different sort of cask maturation and expressions and that sort of thing, I would love to see them do a really, really cool visitor experience. I think that they need to be maturing more casks on site if they can. I think that they have something that a lot of distilleries don't, and I can't even put my finger on what it is, but for Islay, I feel like they are a core part of Islay, and they should really grab hold of that.
It's interesting you say that. I always thought that they had a really nice, like super airy, like really well done, like kind of shopping area within the distillery. They also had their cafe, I think, was one of the best like places to eat on Islay.
They don't seem to utilize it that well. I want them to draw me in. Maybe it's just because we've just come back from Springbank and we've been treated like absolute heroes. Like, honestly, that was ridiculous, the treatment we got there. But I just feel like if you're trying to bring on younger generation into your brand, and it is such a cool, unique, different, punchy fucking brand, I love every aspect of it, I want you to have an experience that really represents that. I want you to do something cool. If I'm going to go all the way to Islay for you, I want you to make me feel special.
I think it was that I went to Ardbeg as part of Feish, but I wasn't there for the whole week. I couldn't make it for Ardbeg Day, so I did it on the Lefroy Day. So I arrived after Lager, and I did the walk from Port Ellen down the coast to all 3 distilleries, and did them all on Lefroy Day.
Okay. That sounds like a day.
It was it was lovely weather for the walk.
Did you walk
it
back?
was great. Walk back.
Crawled back.
Crawled
Did he
back.
fuck walk back? Nah.
And it's uphill. It's uphill
he
back.
slept in the warehouse that evening.
I actually thought like the cafe and stuff. I had a really good tasting flight and a really nice. Hearty's the wrong word. It was hearty because it was a big meal, but it was kind of what I needed. But like a delicious meal as well. It wasn't like stodgy hearty. It was.
I know what you mean. It was really good. Yeah.
And it was some of the best food that I had on Ireland. I heard that they've closed the cafe, and I'm really sad about that.
Oh, genuine. That's not good. Okay. Look, I would agree. Sorry, I'm not like slating them from the point of view of like you turn up there and it's like some sort of shithole. It's an awesome distillery. It's great. I love it. I'm not saying that. I just think, like I say, Stevie and I went to that ice cream thing, and it was really different. They really drew you in.
I see. You want something,
and I think that if you're going to travel all the way to Islay, they should make it that much more special because they've got everything there. They've got all the ingredients. I just think that they can really tip themselves over the edge with something.
I've never been inside when we were in Islay. I think it was closed the day we went, or the after the timing was there. So I can't comment on that. However, what I would like to think is if I went, and you guys obviously have been, don't know how recently, is that from all this marketing, these events that I've been to, these labels, the branding, the campaigns, the comics, I'd like to think that when I turn up, I get a little bit of a theme park experience.
Yes.
A little bit, just something more than the next distillery. Because if they're putting on this front here and drawing people in, as I think it's you said, Ian, if you're going to go all of that way, why not have a really good, like double down on that?
That is exactly it. That's such a good way of describing it. A theme park experience. That's the feeling that I get with the brand. Every time it arrives, that excitedness of, I can't wait, I'm opening this, I want to try it, And I've generally been very impressed. Like I say, the most recent one hasn't quite hit me, whatever though. I'm excited about the brand. I think if I turn up on Islay, I want something completely different because their liquid is, as you said, completely different. So let's make people understand whiskey in a different way. I've got so many ideas, Ardbeg. Bring us down to Islay. We'll tell you what we think. We'll give you some ideas. We'll enjoy some whiskey
together. Here we go again,
together.
thinking we know how to run every distillery.
Come on, Bernie. You know you want to, mate. If he ever watches this, I'll laugh.
I just want to mention the Ardbeg stouts. Let's not forget about those either.
So what were which? Sorry, I'm trying to now remember.
They came in the blue
they
cans.
Were the shorties.
Yeah,
the shorties. Yeah, they came in the blue cans. And I think they were finished in Ardbeg casks for quite a reasonable amount of time.
Seriously,
you loved them.
Seriously,
I had to put them in the fridge. They were a bit too at room temperature.
Oh my god,
bit too stouty for me.
So good,
but
they didn't do them again.
No, I know, but it was cool. even the can was cool, and it was
Can
something
was
different
awesome.
again.
Packaging was awesome. It was very dear, but it was worth the money. Again, they
I reckon
have a
if they
premium
toned
product.
that down and turned it maybe, and it even did a beer range and stocked them, like mass produced them and stocked them on the shelves, that is a fantastic way to get the younger, crowd in.
Well, not even
to
the
the
younger
brand.
crowd, but the non-whiskey drinkers into the category a little bit.
Okay,
those
yeah.
people who are still keen on beers. I know that the category as a whole has been depreciating for quite a while now, but you still get kind of your old boys and even younger guys who are very kind of, I'm going to stick with beers and stouts and the kind of whole pale ale, that scene, which I personally don't understand at all. I don't like beer, but when it comes to stouts, that is one of the best. I put that. I don't know if I should say this as an Irishman. I put that up next to Guinness, like just below. But as a flavour, listen, that is rich.
You're
It
going to get
is
that Irish
so
passport taken right off you after
No,
this
I
show,
won't,
mate.
man. I'm not giving up my Irish passport. The British one is worth fuck all nowadays. I haven't even renewed my British one, so I'm holding on to the Irish one tightly. But no, genuinely, look, obviously Guinness can be beaten. Like, there's no
It was
no
good.
shot.
It was
It is
great,
really
yeah.
good. I would say that is probably the best. Because the Harveystown ones are really good, and weirdly enough, Harveystown use Highland Park casks. So there seems to be some weird tie between Highland Park and Ardbeg today. There isn't at all, but there we go. But the Harveystown ones are really, really good as well. And the 18 it was what got me into that whole scene of stouts and beers matured in whiskey casks. Innes and Gunn obviously do their sort of lager in bourbon barrel. That's great. But for me, I think the Ardbeg again, it was so different. It just set itself apart in such a fucking bizarrely different off-track way. Yeah, I would put it probably above the Harveystown.
It was a statement
below the
stout.
Guinness.
It really was,
It was cool. It was very, very cool. And again, great branding, great story.
I
Did
don't
you
like
go,
Guinness. Sorry, Ireland.
Yeah, you can get the fuck out. That's the discussion next. No, but did you try the shorty?
I did. Yeah, I wasn't
And?
a massive fan
Not for
of
you.
it.
Okay.
To be honest, I would say like just stout in general is not really my.
Fair enough. Look, if you don't like it, you don't like it.
I had an amazing, well, I say amazing, like the most drinkable stout I've ever had. Matt Mackay's homebrew gingerbread.
He's told me a lot about this. I've never tried it.
It's gingerbread stout. It's
is it-
good. It's really good.
I'm really
Yeah.
excited to try it. I'm very
Um,
excited to try that, yeah. And I'd say he's probably up there. He knows what he's doing.
Oh, he absolutely knows what he's doing. I'm sure he'd probably even tell me off saying it's a stout. I'm sure it's a porter or something else.
Right. Good man. Fair enough. So, yeah, I mean, I don't even know how to finish this up. This is like such a good distillery. I love it. Should we just finish that?
Well, I guess what is in order is a buy or don't buy, but
I would buy. Well, I have bought all of them. I've
They
opened
are
them all
all
immediately.
yours,
I've
yeah.
loved them all straight away. If you're new to Ardbeg, I think you've got to try the 8. You've got to get it as a point of interest. It's really cool. It's different. The 10 is just such a good kind of entry level whiskey. But they're all of the core range anyway. I'm sure you won't disagree with this. Are well priced, premium quality whiskies. And if you can get to the point where your palate can accept the kind of brutality of Ardmore,
Ardbeg.
Ardbeg, too many whiskies now. I haven't even had that many.
Too
Ardbeg,
many
apologies. There's too many whiskies to think of. But if your palate can get used to, the brutality of Ardbeg, it's such a winner for me. It's so, just as a dram, as a brand, we are but falling leaves in the garden of Ardbeg. It is a wonderful whiskey. And that's all I have to say on the matter. That's the discussion.
Ian, buy or don't buy on the core range.
I'm
Buy
not,
them all, right?
I'm not sure I can follow like William Purvsworth over here, but I mean, for me, the 8, the Anoa, the Corrie, the Oogie, they're the 4.
The winners.
For me, they're the winners. Yeah, they're the ones I'd go for.
But you obviously don't buy into all of their other sort of.
I've genuinely bought a couple, but I just.
But you haven't got the same excitement.
No, I've sat there and been like, it's not worth the extra for me personally.
Stevie, buy or don't buy?
Well, I have bought all of them. I own all of the committee releases and the special releases. And funny enough, I bought into Ardbeg on their marketing before I bought into their liquid. I obviously had the 10. That was
Right.
about it. But I'm like, it's like being a kid, you know. Hence why they've made a comic for adults.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.
That is the appeal to me. Yeah, thank you as well. You always crack them open, and I keep mine sealed. In fact, no, I've opened a couple as well, but the liquid follows through as well for me. Sometimes I think it's a little bit priced high, but that's what that's just the way it is with them, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love the brand. I'm looking forward to seeing where they go. I just hope they don't kind of sell out and go a bit silly.
Correct. No, I'm really excited about what's next for this brand. Anyone who is watching, on a genuine note, from Ardbeg, we would love to sit down with you. We'd love to talk about the brand more. We'd love to have a little bit more of an understanding. We would love to visit and do a distillery tour, but we'll be in touch with you about that at some point, I'm sure.
I think they've got a good gift shop in, so
I like it.
you like gift
Hopefully,
shops.
hopefully the cafe is open, and I was mistaken because I said it's the best place to eat on Islay.
Gift shop boy over here. Anyway, it's always a pleasure, gents. I think this is a lovely place to wrap up. I'm looking forward to drinking the rest of these drams with you. But as always, a pleasure, never a chore. Slán Siva.
Thanks
to all
for
of
the
you at
bottles,
home.
mate.
Thank you
Slán
very
Siva.
much for joining. We'll see you again soon for the next one.
Cheers.